What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Book Binge on the King Crusoe YouTube channel. This week, episode 48 of the series, we'll be talking about something slightly different than I think my normal videos, but in a sense exactly the same. And I wanted to do this all in one video instead of making it two videos, I'm not entirely sure why, but I guess for logistical reasons in a sense. This week we're covering The Lesser Devil and Other Stories by Christopher Ruocchio. Now, for those who don't know, The Lesser Devil is a novella in the Sun Eater universe, and Other Stories is Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 1. So if you don't have this edition, this special collector's edition, I guess, of The Lesser Devil and Other Stories, that's fine. The Lesser Devil and Tales of the Sun Eater both exist separately. The Lesser Devil in ebook and in paperback right back there. There we go. Now I'm pointing at it. And then the Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 1, I believe, is only ebook at the moment. In this video, I will first be reviewing the novella titled in the collection, that being The Lesser Devil, and then I'll briefly cover each of the short stories within the Other Stories part, Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 1, in the collection. I think I'm going to cover the novella in a way that I typically cover novels on the series, that being with the best elements and the worst elements, and then for each of the short stories later, I'm going to cover them individually and give a brief outline of what I think of all of them. So, for The Lesser Devil, let's first talk about what I believe are the best elements of The Lesser Devil. I think probably the first thing that I've got to say about this novella is that if you thought you didn't like Crispin from Empire of Silence, the first book in Sun Eater, you will no longer hate Crispin after reading The Lesser Devil. If you already liked him in some sense from Empire of Silence, you will like him even more. Christopher does a fantastic job writing Crispin in this story, like, to an extent that I'm really shocked by, especially after, the first-person narrative of Hadrian in the Sun Eater main series, doing a third-person narration of a different character, but being able to see him through the eyes of himself, essentially, but still being third person was a really nice touch and something that I thought was done really well, almost surprisingly well to an extent, and something that is true of all of the Sun Eater that I've read to this point. Character interactions are forever amazing, all the different moments throughout the story, especially when Crispin encounters people and beliefs that he doesn't believe in and may even find heretical. Is heretical the way that you say that word? I'm not entirely sure, but we're just going to go with it. When Crispin encounters these people and beliefs that he, in a sense, vehemently opposes, but needs in order to be able to survive, the interactions between these characters are really enjoyable, just in the way that Ruocchio is able to do in Empire of Silence that I loved so much. It was one of my favorite aspects of the story. The Lesser Devil is also great because it is extremely self-contained. It is not necessary for understanding really anything in the Sun Eater at all, but if you want to know more about Crispin and about an element of Delos, the planet that Hadrian starts off in Empire of Silence, his home world, an element of the world or a portion of the world that you don't see in the Sun Eater, at least as far as I am aware of, being able to see all of that in The Lesser Devil is really cool. It's extremely fleshed out, despite being as short as it is. It's kind of surprising that Ruocchio was able to do it this well, but it was very satisfying. I enjoyed all that. Despite the short length, it was also very epic and fun, even unexpected in the finale in some regards. There was a lot of twists and turns that the story was able to take despite its short length that I really appreciated. The Lesser Devil also explores a couple familiar themes and ideas that the series hadn't otherwise delved into, which was also fun, particularly regarding religion, which is what I was basically mentioning when Crispin encounters things that he doesn't believe in or people that he doesn't agree with. This is what I'm talking about. The way that Ruocchio explores these themes was really appreciated, especially as somebody of his religion versus somebody of my religion who I don't really understand his beliefs to the extent that I could and wish that I did. And like I said, the story is very brief, but the pacing is incredible. The way that the 170 pages in the paperback version of the story was able to go through all of its moments and its arcs without a single sentence of it feeling like it was wasted or overdone or like there was something missing. That was also incredibly good. But, of course, I think there are a couple things about The Lesser Devil that I didn't like as much. I don't think there's anything I actively disliked about The Lesser Devil, but there are certain aspects that may not work 100% for some other people. The first of those being it doesn't follow Hadrian. If you only care about Hadrian's perspective in Sun Eater, I think that's disappointing for you as the reader because Rocky was able to write Crispin so well, and all of the other characters I think he was able to write very well. So the fact that it's not following Hadrian may be a downside for some people, but I thought Crispin was a very worthy protagonist in a lot of respects. So if you're able to give it a chance despite this, I think you'll enjoy yourself regardless. Something that might be a little bit unexpected about what The Lesser Devil is trying to do with its story versus what I think the main story is doing is a matter of conflict, I guess. The conflict in the main series is mostly between species, interspecies conflict, or intraspecies conflict, depending on what the definition of those words are. I actually can't remember which is which off the top of my head. My apologies. But then there's that conflict, and then the balance of hope for peace versus necessity for war. These are conflicts that take main stage, I believe, in the main Sun Eater series. In The Lesser Devil, that's less of a focus. The conflict is more inter-family conflict and between traditional faith and religiosity and other faith and religiosity. There's conflicts in those two aspects rather than the more broad scope war and species conflicts that the series does. So it's a lot more limited in the conflict scope. But considering how short it is and that it's just a one-off story, I think that Ruocchio was able to pursue the themes that he was trying to explore in a way that I found fully satisfying. It's just something that's a little bit different. And of course, if you're somebody who enjoyed some of the more technological aspects of Sun Eater, there's a lot less of that in The Lesser Devil, mostly due to the setting and the story decisions that Ruocchio makes, but I don't think that the technological aspects of Sun Eater are necessarily the most important parts. I found the conflicts, which I've mentioned just before in this review, I've found the conflicts to be the most interesting parts of Sun Eater. So for The Lesser Devil to take a little bit of a step back on the more technical, sciencey, technological side of things and explore a little bit more on a different form of conflict. It worked fine for me, but again, something that is a little bit different about this that some people might find a little bit strange. I I personally don't think that any of the above mentioned, or the aforementioned, I should say, is bad at all in the slightest, just a little bit different from the main Sun Eater series. I still highly recommend The Lesser Devil. I didn't dislike a single part of it. And now that we've covered that, let's talk about some of the tales of the Sun Eater. Now, I believe there are 7? Yes, there are 7 short stories in Tales of the Sun Eater. So I'm going to give just a brief sentence, essentially what I said in my written review for on Goodreads for the Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 1. Just my thoughts and a score for each of the short stories. Short story number 1 was The Demons of Ere. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And of course, if I'm pronouncing anything about Sun Eater incorrectly, that's my apologies and completely my fault. You can blame me for that all you want. Regarding The Demons of Ere, I thought it was a very good opener for Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 1. It had some horrifying imagery that I loved, and the third chapter really honestly scared the absolute heck out of me. Like, it was really terrifying concepts and imagery, just as I said. If this kind of thing that Ruocchio introduces in The Demons of Ere appears later in the series, I'm scared for some of the stuff that is probably going to come up in the series. I gave The Demons of Ere 5 out of 5. Short story number 2, Victim of Changes. I thought this was really awesome to see a sequence that likely happens fairly regularly within the Sun Eater universe, but that we don't get to see in the main series and may or may not get to ever see in the main series. So to see a scene of the type that occurs in Victim of Changes the way that we do was really enjoyable to me, and in its own way also very unsettling. Not necessarily in the same way that the Demons of Ere is, but connected in a very important way. It was very unsettling to me. I also gave Victim of Changes a 5 out of 5. Short story number 3, Not Made for Us. The fact that we get to have a short story that Ruocchio wrote about a first contact with Sealson, that's all I'm going to say about the story, was awesome. Like, I'm super hyped about this story specifically because of that concept. The fact that we get to see it when we would never otherwise get to see it in the main series is awesome. Also, the fact that Ruocchio did a first-person narration starting with this story that wasn't from Hadrian's perspective, obviously because Hadrian wasn't alive during the First Contact, at least as far as I'm aware, he's not, because that was long. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit beyond what I need to be getting in this part of the review. The way that Ruocchio was able to make a first-person narration from somebody that wasn't Hadrian so distinct and recognizable was greatly appreciated. I wasn't actually sure before I started reading Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 1 if Ruocchio was going to have any tales that were first person that weren't from Hadrian. This confirms that there are some and that he can do those just as well as he did Hadrian, so I'm very happy about that. Overall, Not Made for Us was a very good story to be able to read given how long before Hadrian it occurs. Also a 5 out of 5. Story number 4, The Night Captain. Very interesting concept as well. Was glad to be able to explore something with pirates rather than with the Sealson in this one, since the Sealson kind of take center stage in a lot of the other Sun Eater type stories. It was also awesome to be able to see Hadrian in action without Hadrian being the narrator. Also, something that I wasn't sure Ruocchio was going to do was to have Hadrian in a story where it wasn't first-person narration from Hadrian's perspective. He did that in this story, and I thought it was very good. I enjoyed the narration and the character of the narrator, even if I think it might be one of the weakest, if not the weakest, of all the tales in this collection. It was still very good, because, like, let's just say it this way, the weakest Sun Eater story is still better than many other stories, so I can't and won't complain about that. I gave The Night Captain a 4 out of 5. Short story number 5 being The Duelist. This was very brief, very, very short and sweet story. I think it was like 10 or 11 pages in this collection that I have here. Like, really short, compared to most of them being an average of around 30 to 40 pages, this one being only around 10. Like I said, very brief, but I loved what it was doing. I liked the characters. It went for a little bit more of a comedic tone than anything else that I've read in the Sun Eater, and I thought the quips made throughout the tale were actually rather enjoyable and fun change from the rest of Sun Eater to this point, and using a combat story to exemplify the differences between a normal sword and a high matter sword was awesome. Like, I just thought that was really cool. It also had a different end to the duel that occurs within the story than I had expected, which I appreciated a lot. It could have been a little bit more fleshed out, I think, but still felt very good as it was, despite being as brief as it was. 4.5 out of 5. Short story number 6, The Parliament of Owls. Parliament of Owls, just put it the most briefly that I can, was great. Had an amazing tone, very cool world buildings, enjoyable characters, as well as a concept that made this story unique from everything else so far in this universe, while also very clearly having a place within the universe. It does not feel disconnected from Sun Eater at all, despite being it like completely separate from everything else within the universe that I have read. It was also perfectly paced. It was 40 pages. It didn't actually have any chapters compared to most of the other stories that were like 40 pages. They were split into like 3 chapters. This one, no chapter splittings at all. It was paced really perfectly as it was, even though I believe it could have technically justified its own novella length. It was 40 pages, paced perfectly. I think if Ruocchio had wanted, he could have justified making it a lot longer than it was. But as it stands, it was still absolutely perfect. It's easily my favorite story within this collection, and might actually even be my favorite Sun Eater story, period, right behind Howling Dark. Keep in mind, I haven't read Demon in White yet, so Demon in White might change the way that I feel or rank some of the stories that I've read, but behind Howling Dark, Parliament of Owls is easily my favorite Sun Eater stories. I loved it. I rated it a 6 out of 5 because I like to cheat that way. Short story 7, The Pits of Emish. This one definitely got the most analysis out of me. I wrote the most paragraphs thinking about this story. It very much plays on the ideas of an unreliable narrator, which was rather interesting because I don't think any of the other stories thus far have done anything like that. Furthermore, the idea of how reliable history is, specifically. It was also probably the most thought-provoking of any of the tales in the collection, or any of the Sun Eater that I've read so far anyway, and also stands on its own from the rest because of that. I am very skeptical about the validity of the tale for many reasons that are fun to analyze and dig into while reading, that anybody who's read this and Empire of Silence will realize probably felt the same way as me. It was a great story for making me think and squint at the page in a very what exactly are you doing fashion. So I really enjoyed that. I rated it a 4 out of 5. Love The Lesser Devil, 5 out of 5 easily. I enjoyed it a lot. And then the full collection of Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 1, also very easily a 5 out of 5. I'm very, very glad that I fit both of these into my reading schedule when I did, The Lesser Devil being between Empire of Silence and Howling Dark, and fitting in Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 1 in between Queen Amid Ashes and Demon in White. Yeah, that's the order that I'm reading everything in. I'm very glad that I fit both of these into the read along. Both well worth reading. I really enjoyed them. I think I recommend fitting them both in. And if you can fit them in to the reading schedule in between the main novels the way that I am doing, I think that's a very good way to read them as well. I've really enjoyed my time so far. Thank you guys for watching. I'll have plenty more Sun Eater content coming out over the next few months as I continue to read stories. I'm currently recording this near the end of November, which I was actually going to record it 2 weeks ago, but 2 weeks ago I spent way too much time reading Les Mis than I should have, and last week I spent way too much time playing God of War Ragnarok than I should have, but that's besides the point. I'm recording this in late November. This video is going to come out in late December. In December, I'm going to be reading Demon in White, and then Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 2. So sometime early next year, I'll be able to have reviews for Demon in White, and then Queen Amid Ashes, and other stories, which collects, I think it's actually on my bookshelf right there. It collects Queen Amid Ashes and Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 2. So I'll be covering that in a similar fashion to today's video. But then after that, I'm going to be reading Kingdoms of Death and Ashes of Man in January and February next year. So again, I'll be having the rest of my Sun Eater reviews coming out over the course of the first few months of 2023. So I hope you continue to come around and watch some of these reviews, because I've been really enjoying my time with Sun Eater. It's one of my favorite series already, even though I haven't read that many series, but that's besides the point as well. Again, thank you guys for watching. I'll be back again next week with, I'm actually not sure what review. I think this might be the last episode of the Book Binge in 2022, so I'm going to go ahead and wish you guys a Happy New Year before the next episode of it, even if I have my timing wrong. I apologize, but, you know, I don't need to ramble that much longer. 2023 is going to see several changes to the way that I do certain content on the King Crusoe channel. I'm going to be starting a few new things. I'm going to be changing when certain things release and trying to work on other projects a little bit more as well if I can. So if you're interested on all of that, be sure to check out my State of Affairs video coming out on January 1st, which I believe is, if this is the last episode of the Book Binge, I believe that's this coming Sunday, so like 6 days or so from now. So appreciate you guys as always for watching and supporting me through all of my content and all of my videos, watching nearly everything that I release to a surprisingly large extent. I appreciate all of the support. Again, be sure to check out that State of Affairs to make sure you are up to date on all of the changes that are coming to the channel in 2023. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be back again in the next video.